Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am Castlekeeper Bloodworth, and as you can see by the graphics, today is going to be a continuation of not yesterday, but the day before's video that I put up. A very successful video with well over 1,100 views, so it really exploded, and I really appreciate everybody coming in and watching that video, where I asked why you should run and play Castles and Crusades in 2024 and beyond. Well, today, in episode 2, I am going to focus on the player, why you should be playing Castles and Crusades in 2024 and beyond. And I am going to support, at least attempt to support, the argument that Castles and Crusades truly does fit a unique niche within the fantasy role-playing game sphere, in that it is a perfect blend of advanced gameplay, of simplicity, and they're not, they're not at odds with each other when you say that, and then just a real feel of old school and modern game mechanics coming together. Now, I know a lot of people will say, hey, you know what, the best is some of these OSR rules light games. They truly capture old D&D and old school D&D and D&D basic and such. And then you'll have others that say, oh well, the success of Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition kind of speaks for itself, and then they kind of ignore the fact that many of the rules mechanics in 5e are looked upon as being overly complex, and combat takes forever to resolve and such. So I think that a lot of those issues between very rules light and very, they don't like to call it crunchy, but if you have to spend more than an hour creating a character, it's crunchy. The action mechanics in modern games tends to be one of its flaws, one of its downsides. So I am going to be talking today from the perspective of a player, as someone who has played Castles and Crusades, and as someone who has played those other games as well, and as someone who runs Castles and Crusades, and what I'm seeing, based on my players and how they're reacting to the system as well. So without further ado, let me go into the first step in this process, and I'm going to talk about the materials that you will need to be a player in Castles and Crusades. This is the only requirement. You only need one book. This one book is going to tell you how to create your character. You'll have a number of races and classes that you can choose from, and these are basically the most common that you'll see. So you can make an elf, a dwarf, a gnome, a halfling, a human. You can make you can also select from the various classes, be it a barbarian, a bard, a cleric, a druid, a fighter, an illusionist, a knight, a monk, a paladin, a ranger, a rogue, a wizard, an assassin. You can also multi-class and even do class and a half. Class and a half is kind of an optional rule, but there's a wide range of what you can do in just this book, or just using this book. Now, the other thing that this book does that is fairly unique is that the player's handbook gives you all of the rule mechanics You can literally run this game with just the player's handbook and the monster's manual. All right, you do not need the Castle Keeper's Guide in order to run Castles and Crusades. It was a point I made in my more previous video. As a player, you only need one book. So if you have this, you're ready to go. So that's already an advantage right there. There is enough streamlining in here that it's a very simple system to understand, and there is enough variety in here for you to really make your character stand out as a unique character in comparison to others, and that really lends itself into, even though the player character sheet and the action economy in this game is very much simplified in comparison to D&D 5th edition or Pathfinder 1 or 2, but there's so many equipment choices and so many other choices that you can make to make your character stand out, and without all of that complexity of secondary skills and actions and reactions and all of those kinds of things. So it is a very much streamlined and smooth running system, and that's a huge advantage to a player, be it a new player or an experienced player, because you can step into this game system and pick it up right away and completely understand the rules within minutes. It's not that complicated. And even if you're playing a character class that is and race combination that is like the most typical, right? So the most popular character class and race combination in all of Dungeons and Dragons, and this is not me saying it, this is a number of surveys and other YouTube channels and blog spots and everything. The most common race class combination in Dungeons and Dragons is the human fighter. And I will focus a little bit on taking a look at the fighter here in the player's handbook so that you can see how this takes that and that combination, and it clearly lays it out how it will work, and then further enhancements to it, further variety to it can be included through equipment choices and then through the subclasses which come in other books. But again, this is all that you need to start with. So I am going to switch views here, and I am going to go to this very book here, and I am going to jump to the fighter, and we're going to take a real quick look at the fighter, and then I'll go in and make the rest of my argument elsewhere in this. So here we have the fighter, and I will expand this so that you can see clear. I'll double check to make sure. So the fighter, prime attribute is strength. This means that no matter what race your character is, their strength is their prime, which means on a d20 for any strength check, they only need to roll a 12 or higher. If their non-prime attributes are set at an 18, so to make a dexterity check, let's say, then the character would need to roll an 18 or higher, and they apply their attribute scores and their other, their level and such in order to make those challenges as well. Alignment can be any. The hit die that a fighter uses is a d10. They can use any weapon, any armor. One of the key features of the fighter is where you see the basic to hit. The basic to hit, they gain a +1 for every single level that they have. No other class advances that quickly in their pluses to hit. As a first level fighter, a fighter is going to have the option to weapon specialize. They can choose one weapon to specialize in that will give them, with that weapon, a +1 bonus to hit and a +1 bonus to damage. As the character is advancing in levels, at level 2, they're just getting another +1 to hit. At level 3, another +1 to hit. And then when they reach level 4, they are at a +4 to hit, and they gain combat dominance. Combat dominance is going to give them an extra attack against 1 hit die or less monsters. All right, and so instead of just getting 1 attack per round, they will get 2. At level 7, they will be at an overall +7 to hit. Their weapon specialization bonus will now increase to +2 to hit and +2 to damage. They are really starting to become quite deadly with a specialized weapon at this point, because the damage system and the combat in Castles and Crusades is a little bit more severe than AD&D First Edition, and in comparison to D&D 5th Edition, it's a lot more riskier to engage in combat here, but the combat does move much smoother, and I will get to that a little bit later. At level 8, their combat dominance increases, getting an extra 2 attacks against 1 hit die or less monster. So a total of 3 attacks. And at that amount, +8 to hit, they're getting 3 attacks against, let's say, goblins they're fighting. And they're getting an additional +2 to hit on top of that with their specialization, and a +2 to damage. They are probably killing 3 goblins every single round. At level 10, so now you're getting to be quite a high level character at this point. And at level 10, you're at +10 to hit. You're getting 1 additional attack per combat round. So that's against all creatures. And there's some interpretation here if they're going to get an additional attack against the 1 hit die, or additional cluster of attacks against the 1 hit die creatures. And that's something that I'm going to take a look at and try to sort out, at a later time. Basically poll the audience on how you handle that, because that might be a ruling rather than a rule. At level 12, combat dominance goes up to +3 attacks against 1 hit die or less monsters. Now, these are just the literary descriptions, the text descriptions of all of what I just went over with you. But when we get to fighter high level progression, so battle space at 13th level will increase, and basically what happens is that it's assumed that if the combatant is so skilled in their battle space that they will be able to add to their defense by utilizing their surrounding area to give them a +1 to their AC. So if they're using a one-handed weapon and they have their shield, let's say, they're going to get an additional +1 bonus to their AC, because they may manipulate other items in the area. They might use their weapon to help deflect something as well, like a parry. And then they have their shield as well. Or if they don't have a shield, they might grab the chair next to them and use that to help deflect an attack, and yet still attack with their sword as well. It's just meant to simulate the idea that a fighter can utilize their surrounding much better, and gain an AC advantage from doing so. They don't get this advantage if they're using two-handed weapons such as pole arms or bows and such. Going on, at level 17, a fighter's control of the battle space increases, allowing them better mastery of combat maneuvers, and they start getting pluses to their dodge. They have, an ability to disengage even though it's at a -1. Their evade is at a +5. Their flank is at a +2, and so on and so forth. Advanced weapon specialization at level 13 allows the fighter to either choose a second weapon to specialize in, or they can double specialize in the current weapon that they have already specialized. And that increases the bonuses to hit and to damage as well. At level 14, they gain a shield bash ability. Basically, at level 15, the fighter's long use of armor and weapons gives them a +1 to their strength. Advanced combat dominance ability goes up at level 16, 20, and 24, increasing the hit die of the monsters that they can attack multiple targets with. And they get another attribute bonus. They gain 1 point in either strength or dexterity at that point. And we have the chart that shows all of the combined abilities and such that the fighter gets. All right, so let me switch back here, and I'm going to come back to this full screen. So you can see there's not a lot of, during combat, you have to think about what the character is able to do. Most of it is modifiers. And so you're going to know your modifiers before you go into combat. This very much streamlines what the player has to do when they're engaging in combat. And the combat is very, very simple. There is a target number that you're trying to hit. You take all of your modifiers, you add them to your D20 roll, and if you hit the target, you've hit the target. All right, and then you just apply your damage as needed. No charts to look at. Every player knows what their basic to hit is. They know what their damage bonus is ahead of time. And then when they go into combat, the only thing that they might not be aware of is what the actual armor class is that they're trying to hit. But through experience, they're going to start to realize, hey, I see a goblin, and the goblin normally has a 12 AC. And so if I roll this 16, I'm fairly certain I hit this goblin. And they go right into rolling their damage die if they don't roll them both simultaneously anyway. Very, very simple system. So, and all of that comes from just the one book, the Player's Handbook. So let's say you want to take it a step further. The Adventurer's Backpack. Now, the Adventurer's Backpack, and I've done a full review of this, is going to give you a number of subclasses that you can choose from. All right, so there's a whole string of new subclasses that you can do. And then there is additional equipment, including backpacks, which act more like equipment kits that the player character can do. It also includes battle mounts, new types of magic, including rune magic, and then some description of the known planes and pocket dimensions and such to just add a different level or layer of adventuring to your players. So not required, but this certainly does enhance what the players are able to access for their characters in the realm of equipment. So I think it's an invaluable tool for allowing players, especially with those those equipment kits. Every one of my players was like, I can't wait till I have enough money. After their first session, they were like, oh, I have enough money to buy an adventurer's backpack. They're really anxious to get their backpacks because they are a very, very useful tool. But again, not required, but certainly helpful. The Adventurer's Spell Book now expands, all of the various spells. It also makes it very easy to look them up, and all types of rune magic in here. That is basically, it's compiling all of the other lists of spells and spell types and everything and putting them into one volume. Again, not necessary, but it's nice to have. I recently sent a tweet to Troll Lord Games asking them to come out with spell cards. That would be absolutely, amazing if they come out with spell cards. But next thing on the list is the Mystical Companions. So I started looking through this for the first time the other day, and it really did inspire my making the first video in this series. So you can kind of thank, just my glancing through this a little bit. So this adds companions to, animal companions or mythic beasts like dragons. You can become a dragon rider based on this book here as well, and other war mounts and such. This is another book that just takes that character development into another layer here. You can, start introducing those animal companions at certain level limits, and you can say, hey, you're a third level barbarian now, and now you can have a wolf pet or something along those lines. It's just an added component if you want to keep on upping the amount of complexity for the players to engage in with, through their characters. And then the last thing, it's always good to have, if you're playing in a world setting that is like the Castles and Crusades world setting, then the Player's Guide to Aird is a useful, very, very small, hardback that if you're running in the preset setting, then, or the official setting, I should say, then the Player's Guide will help the players in their character creation doing it. Again, not required, but certainly a nice thing to have on the side. So going back to the original argument, so this is all that you need. If you have this, you're ready to roll. And the system is just so easy to pick up and just roll right into it. You're going to be able to differentiate your characters without having all of those multiple layers of an action economy that I think really does bog down many modern role-playing games, and it's a very common complaint I hear, particularly about 5e, where it's like a combat encounter could take an hour. I run combat encounters with this system that is with 10 player characters against half a dozen or more opponents, and it is still wrapped up in 20 minutes, half an hour, at most. And it's very, very much streamlined. It's, players aren't sitting there trying to figure out, well, what is my action going to be? Well, that action didn't work. What is my second action going to be? Or what is my, my response? What is my reaction going to be, in these different situations, and looking at their character sheet and building up these, very like set plays that they'll do. And even in character creation, It's like, builds, having builds. You don't have builds in Castles and Crusades. You have your character class, and you might have some racial traits that work with that in some way. And then your equipment choices are really is where that differentiation, that's where that variety is going in. Um, you know, you could be a very serious threat if you're a fighter who is double specialized with a club. All right, you'll never see that in D&D or AD&D, where someone's choosing to take a very simple club and double specialize in that particular weapon, because the magic items aren't there for clubs for the most part. Very, very hard to come across those, and unless the game master is particularly making them just for that instance. But that's another thing that Castles and Crusades does, is that Castles and Crusades has a whole system dedicated to getting higher quality mundane items, right? So non-magical items. So if you get like a master crafted club that's using like very dense wood, and it's crafted by a master, and there's a lot of work being put into making it sturdier and such. And now all of a sudden with this master crafted weapon, you're getting an additional +1 to hit and an additional +1 to damage, and maybe it's even lighter than your typical club and everything. And now you have a truly unique weapon that has expressed a theme to your character, and it's going to make that character that much more effective in combat using that, without having to have some kind of a specialty magic item, without having to have a lot of abilities that you're pulling from different charts and character creation in order to create that optimized build. You have role playing builds coming out of Castles and Crusades, as opposed to optimized builds that you have coming out of modern role playing games. You have the simplicity that you'll find in rules light, OSR, D&D based role playing games. You have a streamlining of the combat system compared to either AD&D First Edition or compared to 5e. So it is in between those two, and it's taking the most out of both. Actually, it preceded 5e, so 5e took a lot from Castles and Crusades. That now that's always been here, and so you can see the effects of that when you're playing here with Castles and Crusades. That it's like, oh, you know what? I'm familiar with this in 5e, and that's because it was here already. And so, again, the experience as a player, because I can speak to this as a player and as a castle keeper, the experience for the player playing Castles and Crusades is that, number one, and I just had someone ask this question in my own Discord, in my own group, as a matter of fact. So we have to have some backup characters, at least early on, more so than we do in AD&D. And yes, that's absolutely true. The game is much more, especially with its critical hits table and such. If you're using the optional rules for critical hits, lower level characters are going to be much more vulnerable. But as they start going up in levels, that will kind of balance out, and they'll be tough enough to pretty much handle the challenges that they're going to face throughout. It's a really well balanced game for both new players and veterans to tabletop role playing games. And I highly recommend it. And it is equally fun to play as it is to run. And coming from somebody who is virtually like almost the forever GM, that's saying a lot. Yeah, I really enjoy playing this system as well. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please feel free to subscribe if you hadn't subscribed. Like the video. Absolutely put your comments in there. What you think about the system. What is your favorite thing about the system as a player? That's the bottom line. What I'd love to actually read is, what makes this game really stand out. And there are a number of other resources that I didn't even get to because I don't physically have them. I have them on PDFs here and there. There's a player's companion. I could have gone into all of the codexes and bring in those things, playing a very thematic campaign like set in Egypt or and everything, and that's going to change. In some cases your character classes, in some cases your character races might be affected by that, and certainly your weapons choices and everything. There are several Kickstarters that have been fulfilled, and they're about to end up in our hands, such as the armory and more battle mounts and the opponent's armory, monsters armory, so new armors and weapons and such. Hundreds and hundreds of each of those that just add so much more variety that is going to come into Castles and Crusades. So look forward to those as well. And as I get those, I will be doing reviews of those, of course. And yeah, just keep on gaming out there, and keep on taking a look at everything that Troll Lord Games is putting out there. It is truly the game system of my future that I will continue running this for, not just 2024, but absolutely 2024 and beyond. It's an evergreen system, and I can see myself playing this for the next 20 years if I'm able to continue running that long. So you'll have a great day. I hope you like this video, and yep, just keep on playing, and I look forward to seeing you on a gaming screen or at a gaming table sometime soon. Take care.